Hello everyone, welcome back to the TJOmega channel for day 1720 of our daily content grind. So you will excuse me, but mentally I'm not quite sure where I am with today's topic. And what I mean by that is this is either something I've already talked about before, or it has been rattling back and forth in my brain so long I just think I've done it before. But there's definitely stuff in here I know I haven't talked about in the past, and every search I did of my channel to pull up some term that would be in the title of this video were I to have posted it already, I couldn't find anything. So I'm going to go under the presumption I have not done this video before. I apologize if I have, but sometimes that just, when you've done daily content for so long, it starts to get a little bit blurred. So you'll excuse me if I'm like not quite sure today. But nevertheless, I love talking about this kind of stuff because this used to be a taboo in the fandom. See, once upon a time, you couldn't have a Transformer toy that didn't transform in one way or another. If we did like buildable Transformers, you had to be able to rebuild them into a vehicle mode. If you did a cardboard Transformer, it had to like reconnect into some kind of vehicle. It couldn't be done. Like, we just like went nuts, and we went insane any single time any company decided, oh, we're gonna transform a toy, but not one with a vehicle mode. It's commonplace now. Like, in front of you right now is YOLO Park Bumblebee, which is about to be released, and it's completely non-transforming. Looks great, right? And everyone's just kind of fine with that now. It's very much accepted. Wasn't always like that, though. So we're going to talk about a lot of the non-transforming Transformers from over the years. And I realize the most logical way to go about this is chronologically. I should be going from the start of them all the way to modern day. Or I should start in the place everyone knows, today, and work my way back. Frankly, I think the video is funnier if I just bounce around a little bit. So you'll excuse me if this is a bit of a pinball machine today. When you think non-transforming Transformers, a lot of you are going to picture the most recent attempt by Hasbro in order to do this. 2020 gave us Transformers Red, a line that promised to be Transformers' version of Black Series or Marvel Legends, and did not end up being any of those. The figures themselves are decently sculpted. Most of them do not go off model, though some do add detail, and some, like Bumblebee, are way out of proportion. But the goal was to give you 6-inch non-transforming figures at an affordable price, and then not have to, with things that didn't have to worry about having to transform. And in some cases, you have a case there. Knockout here, I feel bad because we love Knockout as a character, but his robot mode design from the cartoons is just not translatable to a functioning toy. Not without a lot of excess complexity and a lot of extra parts that, frankly, you're not going to fit into a deluxe Transformer. So he's in this weird little nexus of very popular, would sell well if they made it, but how do you actually get a car out of that shape? At the very least, we have a non-transforming figure, right? I think that's why a lot of the Prime toys ended up getting Transformers Red characters, because the toys were fine, but none of them were quite on model. That's just the most recent attempt. I mean, this is the official stuff we're talking about. Hasbro produced. If you want to go all the way back to Hasbro and Takara produced non-transforming, go all the way back to the original clones or decoys, depending on which side of the ocean you are on. So decoys were basically just these rubber figures. And this is a popular thing in Japan. In Japan, it's Keshigomu. And it's just a line of rubber figures, little eraser toys, that are hugely popular. And they've just always been a thing in Japan. Now, over there, decoys start in 1985. And they're packed in with things. They are done as Gashapon machine prizes. Typical stuff for tiny toys in Japan. Whereas in America, these start getting packed in with larger Transformer toys. In particular, carded figures. You got a lot of these in mini-bots, for instance. They're a little bit random in distribution. Getting an entire collection of them was a nightmare. They're just kind of meant to be a bonus with your toy, especially on figures that had already been released, like some of the second run mini bots and stuff, just for the sake of giving you just like a little bit of bonus for buying it now. And they're okay for what they are, right? They're just tiny little squishy figures, but it's where we start. It is the genesis. It is the origin of a non-transforming Transformer. So, like, for everyone who ever hated on these things, we had them. They've been here since almost the beginning. Now, if you want something more along what we consider a modern action figure, especially in the higher end branch, you have to go to 2007, because the first company to do that was Revoltech. So this was actually kind of a shock at the time. Transformers was not licensed out to anyone. It was Hasbro or Takara, and that was it. If you were licensed out for Transformers, you were doing some little merchandise thing that Hasbro typically doesn't bother with. Like party favors and cake toppers, things like that. Like little kitsch stuff. Not full-on toys themselves, certainly not full-on action figures. So Revoltech is the first company that really got to do it. I'm not a fan of Revoltech. So if you never experienced one, Revoltech or Amazing Yamaguchi today, the idea is that there are these tiny little universal joints, and they are pegged into the parts rather than like built in or screwed in or whatever. And they have a ratchet effect. Even though they are small joints, they are designed and built so that they have like a solid ratcheting to them, which is a fascinating idea. Should lead to some really solid bots. All the Revoltechs I ever messed with were kind of flimsy and floppy, and they were very annoying to pose. You couldn't really twist a revolver joint. A lot of times the packaging would tell you to remove the revolver joint, turn it to the angle you want, and then put it back in. That's not a toy at that point. This is a model kit I have to keep rebuilding to do what I wanted to do. So, revolutionary little tech device they came up with. I don't think it makes for a great toy, but that's me personally. But they did a few of these, and then later, Amazing Yamaguchi in 2014 did a complete refresh of the Optimus Prime. Yeah, so they got to do a few of these. But it leads to other companies getting to do it. Flame Toys took the mantle in 2017 and did Drift, of all things, as their first toy, which is kind of wild, but it is a really nice toy. Gotta give it that. And it leads the way for more of those Asian companies to start producing the non-transforming Transformers. Even Good Smile, as big a company as they are, eventually got into it with Nendoroids for various Transformer characters, starting with movie designs. It was a foot in the door, and then we kind of just went nuts with it. And that's kind of where the genesis of all of your current ones, like YOLO Park, come from. Now, for those who have been in the fandom long enough, if you think a non-transforming Transformer toy that was released at retail, then you're going to go all the way back to 2002 for something called Heroes of Cybertron. I remember these as being the Transformer toy I could only find at Walgreens. That seemed to be the only place I had it. It was always one of those, like, lower-end type of store. Not a big box, like a Walmart, Target, Toys R Us, nothing like that. It was always at these little secondary shops. It was, places that wanted Transformer product but didn't want the expensive Transformer product. So instead, they got things like this. Heroes of Cybertron is a very small PVC figure line. I say small, like they're really only like 3-inch tall, about that size, about 3 inches or so, 3.5. And it wasn't really like small as in number of figures, because they actually made quite a few of these. But the idea here was it was just a cartoon accurate static figure with just very basic points of articulation. All the parts were just simple pegged and socket connections. So you could twist a wrist, you could raise the arms at the shoulders, you could turn the head, little basic points of articulation. But no, it's just supposed to be this little desktop figurine that you had of one of your favorite particular Transformer characters. And later waves would also include Build-A-Figure parts, so you could actually get an extra figure for buying the entire wave. Kinda cool. The origin to these is, as with a lot of Transformers at the time, based on something released in Japan, which was the Super Collection figure. These were released in blind boxes. Every series had 6 figures, but the boxes came in batches of 12 because you also had color variant for each one. Depending on the series, the color variant was either all clear plastic or it was all pewter, kind of metallic in finish, like a little statue. Also, if you've ever wondered the difference, these were all produced in solid color plastic, so it means they're more durable, etc. But the ones in America were produced in all blue or all red translucent plastic, all for the sake of making light piping in the head that usually didn't work. Funny how that goes. So, the super collection figure, the SCFs, blind boxed. Oh, but let's compound this, shall we? They also did build a figure at some point, but they weren't nice enough to tell you which figure comes with which parts. Everything was kind of random distribution, including the color scheme. So, for instance, if you had like an SCF RC and you pulled the normal cartoon color version, you could pull parts for, I don't know what figures you came with. Let's just, for the sake of example, Metroplex. And you'd get maybe the clear parts for him instead of the color parts. Meaning, it's a random chance that you ever get a complete Build-A-Figure. This had to be a nightmare to get a full set of figures out of. But the line went on for a surprisingly long time. There's a ton of these things. There's a ton. Oh, and Japan did chase figures too, by the way. They're usually color variations, usually with extra parts. Yeah, they came out as normal figures in America. So that was going to bug a lot of people who were being completionists about it. But it did so well in Japan that they actually evolved into the Mega SCFs 2 years later. No blind boxing here. They're just straight up 6-inch Transformer action figures. The kind that, we would shun back in the day. Why did you waste money and retail space on something that doesn't transform? You just give us a transforming hot rod toy, Takara. I imagine a very entitled internet user in 2002 saying. Point being, it's the very first attempt that Takara or Hasbro made at genuine action figures for Transformers that did not have to transform. And you got tons of extra little accessories and parts with them. You have your hands, your saws, your guns, etc. You had alternate heads, and they were like fully articulated as well. At least as articulated as action figures were back at the time. You can see that with all the joints that are visible here in those two hot rods, seen here judging you. They are, they were great at the time. I've got the Star Saber, so they were an evolution. Even though they were controversial, to say the least. Oh, and before we go any further, I do need to acknowledge, because this was around the same era, I'm not including statues in this. I'm including things that are technically toys, at the very least, plastic figurines that are more collectible. So, things like statues, for instance, those kicked off in 2002. And that was done by a company called Hard Hero. Hard Hero did busts of Transformers characters. To be fair, really good looking ones. They were one of the first products on the market that actually paid full loving tribute to the original G1 designs, and they were cartoon accurate. And from the waist up, really, really nice figures if you just wanted, like statue pieces rather, if you just wanted your favorite sitting on a shelf or a desk somewhere. And they were also the first ones to produce a full-sized, full-body statue, and that ended up being Unicron, also 2002, starting off as an exclusive at Bakkan, and then the rest got sold online to just general public. It's actually really cool. It's, again, one of the first renderings, one of the first things of G1 Unicron you could ever buy. So that's actually pretty noteworthy. Surprisingly noteworthy considering there's not a whole lot of extra value on these. As someone who has one and has gotten curious on its value every now and then, you'd be surprised. You'd be surprised. But moving through SCF, Takara started getting a little bit more gimmicky with their stuff as well. And that moved into My Clone. They're super deformed SD style figures. Now, these are blockies before blockies. Especially like genuinely, if you look at an unassembled one, they literally have like the same torso thing and everything. The idea behind these was they had universal ball joints across all their parts, so you can just pop things off and swap them together. Kind of like how Hasbro keeps trying to make Mix Mashers or Hero Mashers work, and it never quite does. Well, we kind of had that. Japan kind of did that with just ball joints back in the day. I always wanted the Triptychon. I don't know what it was. But like when I went to BotCon in 2010, my mission was to find my clones. And I never could. And these days my clones are crazy expensive because they were so limited. But yeah, there's just something about like a cute little Triptychon I always wanted. But these days, third party and blockies are scratching that. If we continue into the US side of things. So the US started doing their own non-transforming Transformers around 2006. That's the Titanium line. We've talked about Titanium plenty of times here. And ironically, they also got started with a Unicron in their very first wave. I don't know why he's holding a moon. They made a choice there, I guess. So they weren't that great. They did technically pose, but a lot of the poses were not all that great. So you can see Unicron could go bowling or wave at you, one or the other, and that's basically all he could do. But they did a lot of those. They did just little die-cast figures. No harm in it, really, but again, getting the foot in the door of, like, can we get away with non-transforming Transformers now? Oh, maybe not, maybe not. They did get away with it with a Build-A-Figure. In 2006, we also got Transmutate, the first time Hasbro tried to do a full-size action figure Transformer. And whether you left it in parts or assembled it, you got a screen-accurate representation of the character, depending on the scene you wanted to be traumatized by. It's still the only Transmutate toy that actually exists. Like, outside of, like, yes, I know there's an RC retool. I know that's not the character from the cartoon, though, is it? It's not the same one. Point being, it was them getting away with a non-transforming figure. And this one commands on eBay, by the way. Especially if yours can still stand up. They did not really think that maybe the legs shouldn't be made of soft plastic. Just maybe. I still always hope that we get another one. I like outside of the Beast Wars Uprising and outside of the Fossilizer. They're weird takes on Transmutate. I would love for them to just try this design again. Screen accurate. They also tried to do little mini ones just like Takara did. Their version were called the Robot Heroes, based on like all the little rescue hero toys they were doing at the time. They did a bunch of these. G.I. Joe got some. Star Wars got a bunch of these as the Galactic Heroes line. I really liked these. They were such a fun little thing to collect. The designs were cute. They did them for G1 movie and Beast Wars, which was actually really rare to get any kind of Beast Wars love at any point. This was also tapping into a few other little things. You know, there was a Tankor. You know, they did a tiny little Tankor. And unfortunately, this line ended short before it got really interesting because it was going into RID designs with Optimus and Megatron, and it was going into Victory. This would have been the first time Deathsaurus and Victory Saber were seen on a US toy shelf. Got canceled. A few examples exist, but like even Star Saber Collector me never got his hands on one. So, little bit rare. Just a little bit. So, for the most part, you've seen like the most significant. Obviously, there are far more non-transforming Transformers out there, right? I mean, we could go on for hours about how many different lines exist now, but for the most part, you've seen all the ones they've tried throughout history that made major steps and milestones into how Transformers can be depicted without a vehicle mode. But there's a few more I would like to close on if you'll let me indulge and go a little bit longer today. So, decoys in Japan had a big brother. These guys. This was 1987. They are called Forms Robo. And they're what it says on the tin. They are double-sized decoys. They're still the rubber figure style. So they fit right in with that collection. And as you can see, they're either larger characters or major characters like Galvatron, Rodimus, and Ultra Magnus, and Metroplex. And the other 4 were the original 4 combiners, or at least the Scramble City ones. So yeah, it's actually fun to think that Decoys actually had a sense of scaling at one point. Like, you wouldn't expect that, right? Like, when no one cared about scaling on the main toy line, but here are these little rubber figures that have scaled combiner characters to go with them. I don't know. I think it's fascinating. Do you want to see the worst one? This is from 1986, and it was produced by a company called Seven, a subsidiary of Takara at the time. So Takara didn't touch this one. And you probably wouldn't want to touch it. It's a simple little vinyl Rodimus Prime figure. Not very well painted when you can't even get the color of the flame on the chest right. You can tell this was produced on the cheap as possible. 2 ways of getting this. You either had the 2-pack vinyls along with an equally nightmarish Galvatron, or it was packed in along with a Transformer Junior's Chrome Dome. Either way, you know there are hot rod collectors out there, I'm staring at you, Proto Man, who saw this thing, acknowledges it looks horrible, but also went, my collection is incomplete without this, and had to track it down. Oh, and as long as we're on hot rods, because hot rod is a great example of some of the weirdest ones. 1987. Look at those legs. Look at them. This is Talkformers, and it is exactly what it sounds like. You see that thing hanging beside his ankle? That's a pull string. This works just like the cowboy dolls that our grandparents grew up with. You pull the string, it talks. 4 different lines in Japanese. I don't know what else to say. Like, I keep forgetting that toys like this exist. Like, who would have remembered that a pull string transformer was a thing at one time? Well, it was. Exclusively from Takara in 1987, and that's not the only thing they tried to produce in 1987 as a non-transforming transformer. These existed. We're going to end off on something called super hybrid models. These vinyl figures were attempting to copy the Studio Ox design for Transformers to a varying degree of success. Once again, Rodimus has legs, I was going to say for days. Rodimus has legs for weeks. And they're not great either. Now, I will say, for 1987, I do think they look a lot better than I would normally assume. They actually seem well sculpted, and I'll give them credit. Galvatron looks correct in his colors, which is not what I would expect. But there is a good reason for that. See, these never came out. The ones you are seeing here from transformers.co.uk, transformertoys.co.uk, these were canceled in 1987. Though a few samples did make it out onto the market, they command a ton of money when they do, because they are exceedingly rare pieces. The Galvatron is the exception because that was released as a BotCon exclusive in Japan in 1997, 10 years after the mold was actually made. In fact, he had 3 different colors of it, including an all lava orange one, like he just crawled out of the plasma bath. But no, these are some of the funnier ones. I thought, let's end off on the goofy stuff, right? Let's end off on the oddballs. But that's a history. That is the most significant ones that I could find throughout Transformer history to show we've pretty much always had the non-transforming Transformers. Commonplace today. 20 years ago, kind of controversial in the fandom. It's kind of weird. But we grow, we evolve, we transform. Or we don't. Now we don't, and it's okay. So there's your history lesson for the day. Thank you for letting me indulge a little bit. And as always, I will see you next time.
Hello everyone, I am Astral Agent Magnetar, a tokusatsu VTuber, and I am streaming 4 times a week over on Twitch, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday afternoons, and a special late night one on late Friday/early Saturday. So come watch, come hang out, and let's make an impact together.